Hi, I'm Gary O'Brien and I made Agent of N.E.S.T. It started off because I had recently acquired a replica MP40 gun and I was keen to try it out on film to see how it would hold up. I also had access to this very cool location down in this cellar. Thought this would be a cool thing to try out. I can try the gun on film, I can see how this basement works, and I just decided to do it as a sort of 1960s thing to make it a little bit more interesting. Then, a few months later, I wanted to experiment with rear projection and filming something which is supposed to be an exterior as an interior. So I made another little sequence about a guy looking through some binoculars and getting knocked over the head. Then a couple of months after that, I was kind of still itching to do a 60s thing. There was a few more sort of elements I wanted to try and just make a movie. And I thought, well, rather than starting from scratch, I will try and incorporate these two smaller bits that I've already shot. And that's what I did. Understood. One of the kind of unintended odd side effects of making the film in the way that I did, stitched together out of little smaller vignettes, I ended up having to be every character in the film, which wasn't particularly the intention when it started, but that's kind of what I ended up stuck with. In fact, it was one of the reasons it took me a while to choose to stitch it all together, because I'm going to end up in this movie where everybody looks the same and it's all played by me, and it kind of put me off doing it, so I sort of pontificated for a bit. But then I got word that the locations that I shoot all this stuff in were available briefly and with like zero notice, and they were so cool. There was so much fun, interesting stuff to film. I thought, you know what, it's a shame to overthink this and worry about it, and I think it was a better choice to just go and film something and not really worry about why everybody looks the same.
Relax.
In addition to being everybody in the film, I had just been the crew as well. By the time I decided to actually cohere it all into one, it kind of became a point of honor that, no, damn it, I'm going to do the whole thing on my own, because that's how I've started, and it kind of made it more fun in a way to be able to look at the finished whole and say, I did the whole thing myself. As a one-man band, so yeah, lit everything, framed everything, did the audio, everything. So that's why the credits are so sparse at the end there. Quite an unusual project in that sense. One of the disadvantages of that, of course, is that for almost every shot, the camera's going to be just locked off on a tripod. For some of those, obviously, that's not a problem. That's stylistically valid. Others, it's essential, say the split screen shots, but there's not really much you can do in being able to put some movement into shots. But I was shooting at a higher resolution than I knew the finished film was going to end up at, and in the 4:3 aspect ratio. So that was tremendously useful in terms of being able to do sort of post-production camera moves. One of the most dramatic cases of that was a handheld shot, and obviously I'm also in the shot and I'm doing this all by myself. So my solution was the camera was on a automated slider, so I put a pseudo handheld movement onto the finished shot, and putting the handheld movement on it was one thing, but because the character stops, then the person following him had to stop. So what I did was I actually played back that little clip of footage, filmed the computer screen whilst looking at what the characters were doing, and then that way, as the character actually comes to a stop, I stopped the wobble. And then what I did was I motion tracked bits of the computer screen so that the handheld would start one way, and then as the character stops, he stops, and it looks organic, and I was kind of motion capturing the handheld cameraman's movement. Now that could work nicely. Another aspect of the story which was kind of amusing to me was that the original scene I shot down in the cellar where the hero shoots the doctor. Well, originally, I actually, in my mind when I shot it, I had it that the doctor was a good guy escaping from some evil people. So it was kind of amusing that actually the roles have swapped, and that in the finished film, the doctor is supposed to be the evil one, and our hero is the guy that sort of brutally keeps shooting him even after he's dead. When I realized that all the effort I'd put into the acting originally was actually now just going to be flipped. And would it matter or not? And honestly, I don't think it does. So I don't know what that says, but yeah, that's how it turned out anyway, which I thought was, I don't know, kind of amusing, I guess.
Perhaps you're not as competent as you think.
One of the other things I wanted to try was this kind of old false perspective technique of using a small object very close to the camera. I had done a few test shots with this idea and I thought they looked pretty promising, and so it was quite fun shooting these kind of false perspective shots. It's really kind of crazy how well it works. I figured out from the camera's perspective where the door handle is in relation to me, which is 20 feet back from where the toy car is. What I did was I cut out the underside of the car and I replaced that with just a clean background. That way I didn't have to worry about getting sort of miniature scale gravel and finding a way to blend that with the real gravel. And then really I just needed to draw a shadow under the car, and I used another car parked in the real position as a reference, just so I got a clearer idea of what a real shadow from a real car actually looks like in that specific situation. It's kind of cool, and it's a nice kind of old school technique which kind of chimes well with the old school 60s throwback. One of the other things that was kind of fun was for the rear projection. It's such a mainstay of so many old movies and shows. That has its own challenges because the projector is only so bright, and yet you still need to cast light on myself or whoever would be acting in it. So it's a bit of a fine balance between exposing enough view to be visible properly, but also not just washing out the whole background. And just shooting the background plates for that as well was kind of interesting. I'm lucky that my local village looks 60s. There's nothing really in the village that ruins the look, the period look. But of course, if there's any parked cars there, that would have destroyed the whole thing. So I got up very early. I got up about 5:30. Luckily it's the summer, so it was plenty bright enough, and then I was able to just stick my camera out the back of my car with some sandbags to weigh it down, and then just drove up and down my local village. So one of the cool parts of the film is the guns, and it was actually because of this MP40 that I made the original little scene in the cellar anyway. When they work, they work and they look really good. But they are a bit of a pain. They're not necessarily the most reliable things. Each round has like a little cap inside it, which is strong enough to cycle the action and eject and so on. And they're quite expensive, and this thing chucks them out, and you can't necessarily find every single one. So at like £3 a pop, you don't want to keep losing too many of them. And then the other kind of gun we've got is this little PPK, and this, unlike the MP40, this one actually does fire blanks, and it's very loud. All these things, they're never that reliable. So a lot of the time when I was firing either of these, because it's expensive and quite critical and you don't know how well the things are going to work, I tried to shoot with two cameras so that I could double up the footage out of one lot of ammunition. I think perhaps my favourite part of the film is actually the little sort of 30-second title sequence near the beginning, which was just quite a lot of fun to do. I was looking kind of at the Baron and Man in a Suitcase, and if you look at those, you'll see, yeah, that's very much inspired by those ones in particular. I kind of felt it was a cheat not to have a original piece of theme music for Agent of N.E.S.T. So I decided to do my best and to try and come up with an original theme tune for the title sequence. So I'm no composer of classical orchestral music or anything. So I muddled through. I kind of just downloaded some orchestral sample packs and found a drum loop I liked, and then did my best to patch together some kind of semblance of music. I knew it didn't really need to be very long because it was just basically for the title sequence. So that was a blessing. So anyway, that's kind of a little behind the scenes making of Agent of N.E.S.T. Thanks for watching this. If you haven't seen the actual film, then go check it out. It's 10 minutes long. And yeah, thank you all very much.